Super. Is there already somebody with a burning question? If not, I kick off and just wave and I'll run over to give you the mic. The reason we have the mic is because we're also filming it for others to visit the presentations later. I wanted to kick off with, we sort of, there's a lot of ingredients already in everything that has been presented. The sensuality actually is really something that reoccurred, which I had not come across in my preparations for this talk, but I'll get to that in a minute. But I was very fascinated by this aspect of we have histories in common. How would you perceive that the most prevailing dominant history is not the one remembered as you presented in your work? So in other words, you mention that the perspective in your second work is indeed stems from, I forgot the mathematician's name, I apologize, and the more dominant narrative is of course the narrative of the Romans introducing the perspective. So are there moments in history, or how do you read into that history, that which history is dominantly presented to get us started?
I think the important thing is to make time and to do research, because of course the Italians developed the central perspective, but it is much more complex. In general, history and culture is much more complex. So as soon as you dig into a theme, you find a lot of beautiful examples how cultures influence each other, because they have always been trade and always been, the cultures have been in contact. And I found it very beautiful, and very often we forget. And we of course, we like also to, as Europeans, to show, look, the central perspective it's such a great invention, but it is more complex. So yeah, with my work I want to point out the complexity.
Yeah. And this complexity through this work, how do you see what we have in common then?
We share a lot of knowledge, a lot of artistic expressions, and stories also. And sometimes I did also a project about the mirror, and it's very interesting that sometimes an invention starts in one culture, it comes across borders, it's taken through trade to another region, and then people change aspects and they use other materials and they develop it further. So I found that very beautiful.
Yeah. You nearly reject, Rawad, I would say, the idea of the Lebanese designer in your provocation. However, I was wondering, to what extent would you then answer to the question of what we have in common or not? Is that similar to Siba's answer? Like, if you research enough, you see that we are intertwined? Because I also see in your presentation that you sort of point at a particular image that is framing, in this case, Beirut and the garbage situation, for instance. So you reject that mediation of the Lebanese culture, at least that's what I read into it. But then, how can we, how would you answer the question what we have in common, and how come it's also about the framing of a particular image or a framing of a particular identity?
But I think this is what I have no idea how to answer a question of what do we have in common. I don't know. Like now on the top of my head, I can't say we have 1, 2, 3 in common. But I think like it would be interesting, like to, I don't know, I lost my thought. Maybe just go around and then I'll think about it. Sorry, I just, if that is possible.
Of course. I'll then,
I think it's just basically that we're all human beings with the same emotional, I mean, not specifically the same altogether, but we all have feelings, we all have a certain psychology, we all can relate to certain things. Storytelling is a huge part of what makes a design relatable or not. Sometimes you might see something that you're not very interested in, but you learn the story behind it, and then, oh wow, this is a great design. And I think that was something that is across borders. It can exist across borders. I can relate to something that's happened 180 degrees on the other side of the globe and vice versa, without even knowing anything about the designer or where it came from or how it came to be. So the storytelling part is, I think, very, very important, that anyone can understand, no matter where they're from, what language they speak, or like anything.
Yeah.
So I guess that's...
Maybe if you can hold the mic a little bit closer.
I'm really annoyed with the echo.
Yeah,
so I'm sorry.
I share it, but also for the others, it's
Yeah.
your in our conversations leading up to this presentation, you were very passionate about the decolonial, the colonial aspect, and the shift of the gaze. That's also what I was getting at with you, of course. Is like, why is this so important? I mean, it's not a straightforward answer.
You know, it's something that I very recently also started to explore. Like, not very long ago, I started realizing that, okay, this exists and this can be addressed without having an answer to it yet, to be honest. But when I thought about it, I also realized that in my own teachings, like at university, I was never taught about the architects of Lebanon. It was just because I chose an elective and I took it that I started knowing, okay, names or learning about specific things. I didn't learn it. Like in art history classes, it was more a European-centered perspective, which was very interesting. I mean, we did learn about different parts of the world, but not, I mean, where we're from, you know, like Lebanese architecture. Although it still goes back to what Rawad mentioned, that it's very diverse as well, because what had happened, I can offer a very, very brief history, is that because of the traumatic wars and the stuff that had happened in Lebanon, a lot of the designers and architects were traveling abroad to get their education and come back to Lebanon. So we were kind of very influenced in that sense. And that made sense, but it would have been nice to learn this. Like, I would like to know how come this building came to be. And I didn't learn it until, as I said, I took an elective by chance that was offered. So I realized that it was embedded even in my education back home, not only because I moved countries and I realized it. So it should be addressed nowadays, and even in my discussions with, because I'm also teaching now at Willem de Koning, and I'm discussing a lot with my colleagues, and they've been, I mean, we were discussing, not with Siba specifically, but because she also teaches there, that the introduction of a different kind of history has to be introduced into institutions. Just for awareness, inspiration, inclusivity, and all of these issues that are being tackled on an institutional level. So that's what happened.
Yeah. You also teach. Is this something you actively bring into your practice?
Not directly. I try on purpose not to bring it directly. What I do is I bring it with the references I present to my students. So in a really subtle way, in a way that does not put me in the kind of center of whatever context I am in, as someone that is pushing a decolonial agenda. And yeah, this is something I kind of tend to kind of stand by, because I don't think it's fair to the level of education that Lebanese people have for this to be the start of any interaction with the world, with the European or with the West. In a specific example, when I moved to Eindhoven, I remember like just thinking in terms of like how can I introduce myself, because every time I'm saying, yeah, I'm from Lebanon, yeah, people would expect me or ask me, oh, how's the situation there? Is everything okay? And I'm like, actually, like, I don't want to answer that question. And so I would actually engage in conversation about global stories. Like, I would like talk about my first bike ride or my first kiss, or like stuff that are like in my head kind of, yeah, global, generic, that are everywhere, rather than yeah, something that is, yeah, I don't know, I took 3-hour bus to school or something like this because of traffic, or I don't know. So, so yeah, this is kind of maybe my answer to, yeah.
So basically, you yourself do not want to be framed by a particular way of looking at the region, and particularly to the Beirut context, but then want to bring across these well, human narratives, I would say, that bond us. Yeah, yeah. I was wondering, Jana, I would say that we are, in the last couple of years, there's a growing awareness when it comes to, well, you mentioned research, that to self-educate, to really push yourself through debunking your own Western gaze. I'm from the Netherlands, but how would you, what would be your proposition to be a good ally?
I think initiatives have already been like starting, I guess, with what I've already known. Like, I've only been here for 1.5 years, and I also still have a lot to learn, not only about what's the view of that topic is here, but also from my view of the whole situation. Maybe I change my mind, maybe I view it in a different way once I learn more about it. But I've realized that talks about, you know, inclusivity and appreciation of everything basically is something that's very interesting to me. I can explain it a bit more. Like maybe designers have the choice to create whatever they want, and it still be appreciated in that context and given the right within that context. And that is a good enough thing for me as a start, to be honest. But I still need to learn a bit more about how it's being done yet in different institutions, not only on an educational level, but maybe even more on exhibition level, big exhibitions, museums, different sectors, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. Because the debate, for instance, in the Netherlands has been very actively, for instance, through the lens of archival practice, even the gender aspect in our archives, all the way to. So I feel that we are in a very vibrant moment of time. Siba, I see you as somebody who operates between these cultures. Yet you do actively choose maybe a certain, also an aesthetic that is somehow in between, or where would you identify with your artistic language in that sense, in relationship to the conversation we're now having?
I had my education in Europe, but since a lot of my projects make this bridge between the Middle East and Europe, I also try to open specific aspects about the Middle Eastern culture to a Western audience. So I sort of simplify sometimes specific aspects so that they become accessible, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm, it does, yeah, yeah. And how do you read our moment in time?
As you said, it's very vibrant. I also teach at Willem de Koning, and I'm also busy. I organized a series of lectures about inclusivity and diversity, which is very interesting. And yeah, we have very diverse students, which makes it super interesting to teach, but sometimes also a bit confusing, because sometimes there are misunderstandings and you need to take time to try to understand each other better. So diversity is not the problem, but inclusivity is hard work.
yeah, and to make sure that you're actually talking about the same, maybe in language or...
Yeah.
What I was also wondering is that, in fact, design itself is shifting so radically, right? Mm-hmm. From maybe also in which domains it interacts. Yeah. Imke mentioned the ecological disasters happening all over the planet, I would say, and there's many designers that are also, so we are actually also, the design field itself is shifting quite rapidly. some of the projects you showed, it's very hard to distinguish. Is it you know, does it operate in the visual arts? Is it still design? I mean, I don't believe in these boundaries so much, but is this something that is being picked up in? I mean, you, for instance, found this. This is part of your practice. So I'm trying to understand different, maybe more immaterial ways of understanding design, and how we, and then I want to sort of maybe move towards support structures and networks to see, is that something that resonates with you?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said is something that I completely agree with. I also don't believe in boundaries between art and design, maybe because I'm struggling to define it as well in my own practice. But I feel like it's always interesting to create, whatever it is. Like, creation is something very interesting to me, whether it's labeled as design, whether it's labeled as art, or in between. It's always something interesting to see how the human mind is working to translating ideas into either physical objects or visuals. And that goes back to how we can all relate together on that level, basically. So for 4200, I'm not sure where it's going to go. I mean, right now it's pretty invested in Design Week and in what we're doing right now. I'm going to take some time off and then move it forward. But my idea was because when I started teaching in 2019, I wanted to bring references to my students from their own culture. I ended up bringing references from European cultures while they were designing furniture, which were not very relevant to the manufacturing or fabrication that they had at hand or were using. So that was not only confusing to them, but frustrating to me because I didn't know where to start. So that was when, I think that was the initial point of 4200 before I even realized it. And this is where I think is developing now into tapping into decolonizing design and researching about what is decolonizing design. Basically, is it something that exists, or is it something that already happened and we're moving forward? How is it integrating into institutions? How is it integrating into design practices? Like, how are designers becoming more aware when they are designing something as to not, take something from another culture and appropriating within their design without realizing, or using it in a way that is not intended to, and in a very unrespectful way. Sometimes it's interesting, of course, because it's still art to me. That's the blurred line again. But these are all questions that I have, and I think the future of my project is going to tap into that and into the research of the connections of what was happening. I mean, I don't know, in the 70s when architects in Lebanon left and studied in Europe, what was happening in Europe back then, and what happened in Lebanon after that, and how have we been connecting this web across the globe. That is something I'm very, very interested in, and I still need to research because the resources are not very available, so it needs time.
Yeah, but that's something that I'm also interested in, that you're doing two things at the same time. You're developing your own practice, but at the same time you're building up let's say a network of practitioners and sort of trying to scale up. And since we're at the Design Week, which is a institution, right? So I'm hinting at like how important are these support systems, and how can we understand them beyond, visibility or celebrating only the designer. You mentioned House of Today. Are there? Can you elaborate a little bit on these, on the importance of these, formal or informal networks?
Just to go back to the idea in terms of how can we understand design beyond its physicality or object-oriented end. There are some projects in Lebanon that are being implemented that, of course, are much more in terms of like social landscape and architectural design on a bigger scope for areas in Lebanon and in different cities in Lebanon. But in the presentation that I did today, it's also good to mention that there is, because of the turmoil that the country is going through and has been going through, there is an important kind of aspect in design there that should be sold, and that comes from the need of designers to sell their products. a dire need to actually have it as a commodity. That's one thing. Second thing, in terms of House of Today, which brings me to House of Today. So House of Today is an NGO that was started in 2012 by a woman called Shireen Maghribi. And she was interested in design, and she saw that there is like a lot of designers in the Lebanese design scene that are working on individual projects but are not connected to each other. And they are trying to do something, but they don't have any platform to actually put their work on. So what she did is she created this kind of biennale that gives them a theme, and with this theme, she takes care, like the foundation takes care of the production of all the objects, and then the designers get a certain fee for producing these objects, and then they are sold for very high prices. Like, it's really collectible design. And from the money got from these biennales, this money is given to 2 or 3 applicants who apply to an open call to have a scholarship to study in a bachelor's or master's abroad, in Lebanon or abroad. And this is how I got to come to the Netherlands, because tuition fee for a non-EU student is 15,000 euros. That was in 2017. So for each year of my master's is 15,000 euros. This is only for the school. So through this NGO, I got to kind of arrive to the point where I am now. And this NGO is continuing. And after the 4th of August, the blast, the House of Today also invested a lot of money in refurnishing the studios of the designers that are there. So it's a really, really important foundation. Yeah, and maybe Jana, you can say more about it. I don't know if you collaborated with them or not for this project. Yeah.
For Ingrid, actually, that was my first step into the design scene, let's say, as a young designer in Lebanon, and they helped me produce Ingrid, and I showed during the Biennale my piece. The support is incredible when you have several institutions, and I would like to also mention FANTASMEEM. 2018 was a good year for Lebanese design, I think. We thought, at least I thought that, okay, I had just gotten back to Lebanon, and I can start working on my design studio. And evolving it bit by bit. 2019, things started going downwards a bit, but that was also when I participated in the first design residency offered by FANTASMEEM, and that's where I met other, I think we were more than 13, right? 18, sorry. 18 designers from very different disciplines, and that was important for several reasons, because it was during that residency where we realized that the struggles that are faced by designers in different fields are very similar. Like we don't have access to funding too much, or maybe workshops to better your skills at a certain craft that you want to learn, exposure, exhibitions, and all of these things that usually designers really need in Lebanon. So it was at that time when we got together and we realized, okay, we need to make a collective. We need to make a collective so that we are able to produce to help designers like us, younger designers who are still in universities, maybe create some also awareness about what is design and what kind of design field I should choose when I'm a high school student entering university, because it was a bit unclear as to the different not sectors, but fields of design that one can choose. After that, it was a huge mess. There was the revolution, and 2020 was not even better at all. But finally, I think this year we were able to register. I don't know if I moved too fast into another topic.
No, go for it.
This year we registered the support structure, which really came out of this residency. So it was me and another colleague, Alia Abu Awad, not colleague, a friend, and we kept discussing the need for this collective. And after all the issues that we faced, we realized, okay, a collective is very soft. We need a support structure. And we spent since 2020 really working on organizing our thoughts, thinking what kind of programs can we offer, what kind of issues need to be tackled. We created a lot of research that we sent out to designers that they can fill and tell us what they need, so that we can try to like think of things that we can include in this structure. So this year we finally registered it under the name Diwan of Culture, Design and Innovation, DCDI. And we have our first event as well, like tomorrow, next week. Thursday, sorry. Ali is organizing it, I'm focusing on Design Week. It's similar, I guess, to what we're doing in Dutch Design Week, but it has workshops, it has talks, it has a panel that is parallel to this panel, also on cultural colonialism, but in sustainability, in the sustainable sector and design. And we have very, very cool panelists as well on that panel. So we wanted to see how different designers in each country and how to bridge it goes back to bridging as well, not the gap, but bridging the topic maybe across countries.
Yeah. We're entering the last 5 minutes, and I was wondering if there's somebody in the audience that wants to pose a question or bring something forward. If not, I will keep on going for 5 more minutes on return to storytelling. And storytelling as maybe Siba, you can reflect a little bit on the role of storytelling in your work, because we have the 2 rivers, the Tigrat and the Euphrates. Of course, I had to think about the stories. You mentioned the embodiment of stories. You introduced this foundation that you started. So how important, or what is the role of storytelling in your work specifically, and how do you hope that it bridges these cultures, or where you started off with, Rawad, also saying that you will have nearly this personal need to connect. So the body and storytelling, I was wondering if you would want to return to.
I love stories. And stories for me are big motivation. So I make my research, I find a story which I find fascinating, and this is my personal motivation to translate it into material, to finally have objects on installation. And then through photography and also film, sometimes I use film, I bring aspects back from my research. Sometimes I just translate it into a certain atmosphere, and sometimes there is really a story. Like we made a short dance film in the beginning of this year, with also like Andres Marin, the dancer I shot before, and the American dancer, Caitlin Mara. But what I want to offer to my audience is to be connected through design, so through the visuals, or through the story. So I offer like 2 entrances to connect to my work, and if they don't like stories, it's also fine for me, or if they make their own interpretation, that's also fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why is it important we share stories, Rawad?
Very big questions. I think it's like, the simple answer is that is a universal language, and we can all relate to it. I think Jana already said that. In terms of the works that I showed, and also if someone is more interested in going in depth in what is happening in design in Lebanon, there is this aspect of storytelling that always emerges in terms where the story is kind of more important than the object itself, or it accompanies it on the same level. And so in terms of what I said before, that Lebanese design does not have a language yet, however, its language can be considered now, until now, can be this storytelling. And this is also important to mention. And yeah, I think that's it.
And how important is locality in storytelling?
Yeah, this brings me to an idea that I wanted to say before, but the talk did not. The thing is, everything, the infrastructure for design in Lebanon is based on, it's actually quite humble, but also quite skillful, because we have a huge network and also a big amount of craftsmen and craftwomen that actually follow the making process of the designer to really from the start to the end. And usually when the finished product of these Lebanese designers is presented, this craftsmen and women is hidden, is not presented. Yeah, the infrastructure is not only these designers and these thinkers that actually, as Jana said, traveled abroad, have a master's from ECAL, from Design Academy, from Olivier de Serres, whatever, like any schools in Europe. And yeah, actually, they draw, they are very creative, they are very, they really take in the context and the kind of the struggles of whatever they're dealing. But however, the craftsmanship behind and the actual work is not presented with them, which is not only in Lebanon, I have to say, it's not only in Lebanon, but I just wanted to kind of pinpoint that, point that out, because I think also in other contexts, in other countries, this is also not talked about a lot, in a sense, I think, I'm not sure.
Yes, please. Oh, fantastic. You are in my gaze and this person is not. Please, I didn't see. Marie. Let's see how far we get. Yeah.
No, I just had a bit like a very conceptual question. It's a bit maybe too much, but I was thinking, you said that the story is more important. So why do you feel the need still of doing design? And why not narrating stories? Like why going through objects? And
Sorry, I took the question. Was the question directed to me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because she likes writing stories.
Yeah.
No, I also see her as a storyteller, but that's besides the point. The question is, why does it have to then, if you
take the form of
design?
Of
why
design.
not a storyteller or a performance or?
Yeah, but then brings us to the question that we all here ask: what is design, and what forms can it take? Because a written story, I can point at it and find design elements in it, and that makes it kind of also a design object. That's one thing. The second thing, in terms of your question, I felt is kind of like, why me, Rawad, still feel the need to kind of do design? I stopped doing design because of exactly this question. I stopped making. In my graduation, I deliberately wanted to graduate with nothing. So it's also questions that I've been busy myself with since Design Academy. Yeah.
As someone who's still designing, I mean, I'm hoping to continue design soon as well. It's not a matter of either or, I think, because they're very complementary. Like in my class right now, and we're teaching product design 1 and 1.1. My colleague is also introducing them to poetry writing, and that should be complementary to the objects that they are producing in class. And that is also part of my own process. So even when I was in architecture school, I used to finding keywords which are text or writing something which is complementary to an object you create can be very powerful. On top of my head, my final year project at AUB was based on books. Like I read Alice in Wonderland and The Little Prince, and I took out from them things that I can visualize and turn them into physical objects. And that can, like, to me, I think is very dreamy when you do that, and it's done well, of course, so that you can see the relationship between text and physical things, whether they're objects or whether it's an experiential, like spatial design. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it answers you, but it's also very subjective to the designers. I don't know if you would like to say it.
Also, Siba, you have like an end. Sorry, but your work always has an end, a physical end, in a sense of like an object-oriented end. And so, how can you answer this question?
What I'm good in is giving forms, designing. So I love stories, and they're my inspiration. And also I take them in, like they're very important in the result, but my work is designing. Yeah.
as a synthesis. Yeah. Anybody with a yes, please.
So my question is more directed to Jana and Rawad. You both mentioned that you're trying to distance yourself from the label of Lebanese designer, but at the same time we are talking about decolonization. So how, let me try to frame this. How do the two interact? How do you're trying to distance yourself from your nation, your origins, and at the same time distance yourself from the Western influences on that origin? How do the two just, because I can't really connect them properly.
Yeah. I'm really glad you asked that, because I don't think that's what I meant.
No, I think it's what I meant, but it's not what Jana meant. But
Yeah.
Okay. It's a paradox that I wake up with and sleep with every day, and I do not have like a certain clear answer to give to you. But the thing is, like, also coming here and sitting here under this title of this talk, like, I'm like, okay, but I think this title would be more interesting in France, for example, which is a country that actually colonized Lebanon. If you take, for example, what the Museum is doing in Marseille, a big museum in Marseille, like there at least has to be one exhibition about Algeria, about the Arabs in this region. Here in the Netherlands, there's a lot of exhibitions that are happening in terms of like Suriname and like all the colonies, yes, and yeah, like in a sense. So what I said because I'm questioning the fact of like me sitting here today under this title of the talk in the Netherlands in Dutch Design Week, asking myself like, yeah, should I be here because I'm Lebanese, or should I be here just because I have something to say? So that's the thing, which I don't have the answer. They go a bit hand in hand, because I'm not also rejecting my nationality, proof that I'm sitting here tonight. Like, so yeah.
But it is it's a nice question indeed, introducing a paradox. Do you feel for responding to the question on this? It's sort of also this global discourse versus local reality somehow.
Yeah. I think the discussion has to start somewhere. I mean, it just happened that we're here, and it's an important topic, and I think we all have opinions on it, so why not sit and discuss it without having to reach a conclusion? Like, because I don't think it's possible right now to reach a conclusion in 1 hour, you know, without extensive research and like references and all of that. It needs a lot of work, but I think it's good to start the discussion in some way. And when I said about label, I mentioned labeling between artist or designer, like as a profession, because I still don't know what I could do there, because I'm also working in creating programs. So what is that also? So that's the label I was talking about.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. We are going a little bit over time, but we started a little bit late because the questions are now arising.
I'll be super quick. Okay, this is for everyone. Do you feel, as artists from Lebanon, that you have to walk a fine line in your work to not fall into the trap of tokenization or exoticization?
So you're asking us. So you're asking us, how do we do it?
Yeah. Do you feel like constantly a pressure to not fall into these two traps?
But this is why I came with this presentation. This is why I came with these answers and like this kind of mentality to present this, because I feel it's the first time I'm being tokenized. This is what I feel in a sense. But I think it's time now to just let it be. But yeah, like I try to kind of work my way around it. But I think at the end it's good to also kind of face the fact that yeah, it's there, and the conversation is happening with you or without you. Maybe ride the wave. I don't know.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's not tokenization as much as I lost my train of thought. Not hiding, basically. Like, the discussion is happening, and why should I hide the fact that I come from a certain history, and I have all this experience, and I have all this knowledge? When you're hiding, it's like you're either denying it or you're ashamed of it in a way. Let me just talk about it and address it in a way that makes my opinion known, basically, and also work towards understanding it better, maybe, as well.
Last question, if not, yes. For you, the microphone is too short, so maybe if you can, yes. Subject. Yeah.
I feel the first part of what you said answers the question. And I wanted to tell you thank you for putting words into what I was trying to do. I think what you said is really, really on point. I think we're all like very multiplicious, and I don't want to like sit somewhere and like be someone that is Lebanese. I just want to be, you know. But however, I still have in my bio is a Lebanese curator, which was, you know, a paradox that I live with every day. And I just wanted to highlight this and not say that I have the answers to it, or like, but I just want to say I'm not sitting here not thinking about it, or like thinking, okay, actually I'm Lebanese, look at me. Like, that's also kind of another thing. So yeah.
As Jana said, this is a topic we can talk about for 1 hour or 5 weeks. Final question, and then I want to wrap up. Did everybody hear that? But how does that then relate to the point that was made on multiplicity as an identity? To embrace this multiplicity as a...
This is one thing that now people are being aware of it more, so that because of this diversity, that because of this can be our identity, that we are very diverse in many aspects.
However, this is coming from us not having a choice. We don't have a choice except to talk about this multiplicity, you know, or like say that maybe that's our way to kind of define something. Because let's face it, as human beings, we need to define and have meaning at the end of everything. So yeah, and also what I wanted to add to, sorry, I forgot your name. Ruba, what Ruba said is that Lebanon gained its independence in 1943. It's like less than 100 years, like. So yeah, it's something worth noting, and in it there's like a lot of turmoil and wars that were happening, and so yeah, that's something worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, very, very good point. Is there a point to make?
What do you? It's another question. I mean, I don't know if it's a final question. I don't know if I got it wrong, but I want to ask you. Yes. Why did you think it was important to ask them what do we have in common and not what don't we have in common. Like the idea of pointing that there are more differences than similitudes. Because for me, what do we have in common? I mean, ask me that about a butterfly, and it would going to be hard to answer what do I have in common with a butterfly. But if you ask me what do I have in common with someone from Suriname, I could bring a list of things. So why, if again, the idea is of talking about colonialism, I think thinking that we have many things in common is what brings us to, I mean, it's a question for you.
It's a question for me. Well, I knew we would speak a lot about differences, or at least locality and storytelling and different aspects of interpretations of the discipline, or through the practices and even personal positions within that. And for me, storytelling is also a sort of a way to search for what we have in common. So that's why I thought I start with searching for common ground to then deviate into multiplicities. But I actually was very touched by Rawad's answer, that what we have in common are very... I don't think you did answer. No, I said I can't answer this question. No, exactly. Yeah. No, but he did mention, he mentioned that I was very touched about the stories he likes to tell about himself. That was your answer, right? Or by not answering. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this would be a beautiful way then to stop and do one round of what we do not have in common then. Is that a way out? To make a full circle? Because I was actually going to finish indeed, because we touched a little bit on education, we touched on the precarity of the conditions and how you are somehow trying to manifest that or connect and bring awareness of through research of the histories that divide us or bring us in common. The mediation we talked a little bit about, like how not to be framed in a particular way or move beyond. I thought the idea of the right to multiplicity is very beautiful, and also bringing to us the awareness that your nation is very young. 33 is yesterday. 43 is yesterday, and reading into the region, it's just shocking how many conflicts have been arising. But I think I want to indeed then end on what we don't have in common.
But who are we? In a sense, I really can't answer this question.
Okay.
Talking about Dutch and Lebanese, I have a long list, but I'm not gonna go into it now because I can't.
Yeah, I like the aspect of what we can learn from each other more than looking for the division. That's why I started with the common. Okay, gee. Now I'm stuck for words. We keep it at that? Thank you, Harry. No worries. Thank you, Rod. Thank you. And thank you to the Goethe Institute.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Jana.
Thank you, Jana, for organizing this.